Today we're going to be covering the smooth slow motion feature in Final Cut. This is a new AI feature they've rolled out recently in a recent software update, and I'm really enjoying the results. The way that this works is pretty straightforward. It takes the 24, 25 or 30 frames of video footage you would record for normal standard playback. Using AI, it tries to understand the difference between movement. Think about it like animation. You get one frame with the character in one position and another frame a fraction of a second later, and all that is happening is that Final Cut is filling in the gaps between those pieces of distinct movement. So with that said, I want to show you this on the computer. So if you turn with me now, we could take a look at Final Cut. And we have some footage from the Nikon ZF with the 35mm 1.4. This camera is great. I really enjoy using it. But actually, it doesn't really do very well in slow motion. The camera tends to crop in. It's kind of a smaller portion of the sensor, the Super 35 portion of the sensor. And that doesn't look quite as pleasing, in my opinion. So what we have here is a 25p clip on a 4K timeline. It says 3840 by 2880 because I've actually cropped it to 4:3 because I really like that aspect ratio. But just to prove this clip is in 25p, you can look at the top right here. It says 25p Rec 709. So to apply it, all you got to do is click on a clip. You come to this retiming selection here, and then you go to Smooth Slo-Mo. And then you take the amount of time you want to reduce it to. So the 50%, 25%, and 10%. I have tried the 50% and think it's literally indistinguishable from actual 50p footage for my use case. At this point, I'll drop in the clip already rendered out so you can see what it looks like. The really crazy thing, though, is you can actually slow this footage down even further. It can be slowed all the way down to 250p, so that's 1/10 of the speed. The 250p has some artifacts, like if we look over here at this segment with James opening and closing his eyes, you'll see that there are some times when this doesn't look 100% natural. That being said, when you look at the original clip, it also didn't look natural. So actually what's happening here is that strange movement is being exaggerated by the fact that we're extending the amount of time that it takes. But when you actually scrub through the footage, you'll see that gradually Final Cut sort of adjusts the footage so you see that interpreted frames. This frame that we're seeing right now never really existed. And if I click somewhere else, watch James's hands and just see what happens. You can see that that movement happens slightly just to kind of get it ready to move into the next frame. In the 240p, this happens a lot more aggressively. You can see there were 2 frames overlapping and it snapped back into like the perfect intermediate position. So it's taking those 2 frames and working out what the median position should be between the 2 pieces of motion. Like some clips will see it more than others. So for example, if he makes a quick movement, you'll see that there's quite a big adjustment. But if it's a smaller, more considered movement, we don't tend to see such a big shift. In practice, this might sound crazy and it might sound like technology going too far, but this is actually pretty similar how a lot of other compression technologies work, just done in reverse. So if you think about the difference between a long op codec and an all intra codec, all intra records every single frame as the camera sees it. The file sizes end up being bigger, but you have a real version of every single frame. Whereas a long op codec will work the opposite way. It will take a few like keyframes and then it will work out the changes between those frames and only store the changes. So essentially what Final Cut's doing here is similar to what you'd be doing with a long op codec. It's taking limited keyframe information, working out where the changes are and trying to average out movement in those places. And in practice, that sounds like a simple idea, but the fact that it works this well is pretty incredible. And honestly, I don't know that I'm going to be shooting as much in slow motion anymore. I probably wouldn't deliver something in 240p full stop. That's probably a little bit slow. But that said, there's no reason why I couldn't. The playback really does look impressive. Like you wouldn't have trouble distinguishing this from actually natively captured slow motion footage. And I think that's kind of the advantage here. It's not that I think it's going to replace actually shooting in slow motion when critical detail is important. But if you're shooting a project that largely is narrative and you need to kind of record audio, you want to show somebody's reaction in real time, you want to kind of lean into the reality of a moment, but there is a point during that segment where something needs to be prolonged. Maybe something happens ultra quickly. If you're a wedding videographer, that might be the first kiss. Maybe you want to extend that moment beyond the number of frames that you captured. That happens quite a lot to me. Maybe it does to you. to the point where I would only shoot 50p if I was shooting events coverage, because I really wanted to be able to have some level of slow motion. And that kind of restricted the cameras that I could actually use for videography, because if I wanted results that looked like this, I would need to shoot on a camera that maintained crop, maintained kind of bit rate when it cropped into a smaller portion of the center. And that's not normally how these things work. Normally, they'll crop into a smaller portion of the sensor, or some other change will happen to the quality of the footage. I mean, honestly, even data could be an issue when capturing, because at best 50p should take up double the space of 25p. That's just how it works. Twice the frame should be twice the data. But this kind of takes that away at capture. Now, there are some definite disadvantages. Like, you've seen the playback speed. Like, up to now, hopefully you'll have seen the real footage. But if I hit spacebar here so you can watch the footage play back, I really want you to watch just how slowly this is playing. And I am on a maxed out M1 Max MacBook Pro with 64 gigabytes of RAM, and it still performs like this. Like, this is very slow. I would not particularly want to edit like this. So the way that I would normally recommend it is, if you know where you need to kind of have this additional footage, or you know the area you want to slow down, you might want to do this as a final step and definitely not the first. There is also some noise reduction on these clips, which is probably going to be affecting the performance as well. But yeah, overall, I think that the main drawback is the amount of time that it's going to take you to edit this and kind of render these files. In the end, it's probably worth it, especially if you've only got a smaller segment. I have tried this on longer projects and had limited success. I really do think this is better used for short clips and times when you're trying to extend footage for clarity, or to kind of cover over some voiceover, or to extend a moment that felt more important than you expected it to be when you recorded. All that said, this is going to be a super quick one. I am very impressed with this feature. I generally love Final Cut Pro. It's one of the applications that I use the most. I have Resolve, I use Resolve often. But honestly, Final Cut for me, more and more is becoming a one-stop solution, and not just because of features like this. There's also new ways of editing footage. So if you click into this clip here, you can see that I've got a number of different corrections going on. They've just introduced this color adjustments feature that can be renamed, so you can kind of segment your edits. And it gives you a much more photography style editing interface. If I want to expose differently, I can just change the exposure slider. If I want to change contrast, I can globally reduce contrast with a contrast slider. Now, it's not a one size fits all. As you can probably see on this clip, there's a bunch of different corrections that are being made. We've got a bunch of different LUTs going on. But I find this workflow to be pretty efficient, and it gets me the same or better results that I'm getting out of Resolve, largely because I can actually use Resolve to create LUTs and then bring them into Final Cut that I can edit with later. So use your own judgment. But for me, this is going to be something that I keep coming back to. I can genuinely see myself using this on projects where we're limited for light, where I need to extend segments to cover voiceover. And in many cases, I may just do it to allow me to use cameras that don't currently have outstanding slow motion for slow motion purposes. That's the main reason why I chose the ZF for this particular test, because the ZF is a full frame camera that crops into Super 35 when you're shooting in slow motion, which would mean reframing or changing lensing if you were going to run a slow motion segment. And that's not something that I'd normally want to do on any kind of shoot. It would completely ruin my creativity. All that said, I'd love to hear what you think. This is definitely a bit more rough and ready than the average video that I make, but hopefully it helps you and somebody finds this useful. If you guys have any questions about this, feel free to leave them down in the comments. This is literally just a bit of an explainer and introduction. And as a sign point, can we just get a little bit of appreciation for how nice this 35mm 1.4 looks? It's got really interesting background blur. And on this frame especially, I really appreciate the way that it looks. It's just such a nice, simple optic, really nice color rendition, and really interesting background blur. I wish that Nikon made more lenses like this. I know they've just launched it, and I'm very excited for more in this range in the future. If they ever release a 28mm 1.4, a 50mm 1.4, or an 85mm 1.4, I will be all over those lenses. This series is absolutely awesome, and there is a video coming on it very soon. With all that said, guys, I'll catch you in the next one, and yeah, have a great day. Just to end the clip, I thought I'd play out the footage for you in full. So here we are looking at the Nikon ZF 35mm 1.4 at 25p. Simple clip just to test this. Here we are at 50p. And honestly, to my eye, this looks literally indistinguishable. It's so good. Again, this is not normally a sequence I'd need to drastically slow down, but I felt it was a good indication. The human face tends to be a really big indicator as to whether or not this kind of thing has been successful. Like, we're really primed to pick up on human motion and especially the face. So like these sections here, like holding the mug, feel completely normal, completely natural. These little personal details look great. For me, the only area of potential problem is when we see the front view, which focuses more on James's face rather than these smaller details like his hand and watch and the background blur that we're seeing in this shot. When we do get to the face, I want you to pay extra special attention to the eyes and the blinking. I mentioned it in the bulk of the video, but this is something that looks unnatural. When you come to it, it feels strange. But if you look back at the 2 prior clips, his eye movement is actually like this in all 3. We're just not used to seeing it slowed down this much. So there you go. That's the segment that looks unusual. But yeah, if you look back at the other clips, it's exactly the same. Anyway, there's just a little bit of bonus content I thought I'd leave you with, because obviously I know that you want to see the clips back to back. I'll do my best to add proper chapter markers to make sure that we've got useful information on these different sections. And yeah, like I said in the main video, I'll see you in the next one, guys. I'm going to be doing a bit of a thorough review on that 35 1.4. See you in the next one.